All right. Hello, San Ildefonso. How is everyone doing? My name is Ladon Yazzie. I am the CDC Foundation Tribal Public Health Educator here, providing information. We just got through a few podcasts this week, and today we are wrapping up the week with a special guest from Arizona. We have Artie Yazzie, Master Gardener, who's going to share a little bit of information about how we can get more familiar with gardening. A few weeks ago, we reached out to the community to share Sembrando Salud uh, gardening project that they put together for individuals in the New Mexico area. And with this, their project shows online instructions on how to from grow organic produce from your home. And so, what takes place is they provide us with these gardening kits. In the gardening kits, we were given organic soil, a few drippers, um, tubing for water system, and also seeds information packet. And so this was just basically a starter kit that would allow a little bit more, it would allow individuals to get started in their own projects. And so what we did was we gathered these supplies. And so we have a few more kits available here at the Health and Human Service Center. The ultimate goal is to make sure that everyone's able to understand and learn how to grow their own produce. This can be real expensive, but then also we want to really appreciate and understand that that produce comes from the earth, and that we're able to see um, the process, the time, and the effort that goes into growing our own produce. So I feel that's important. And so here we have Artie Yazzie, who's going to share his expertise in getting us started. Maybe a little background of information would be helpful.
Okay, yep. Good afternoon. My name is Artie Yazzie. I am a master gardener out from Arizona on the Navajo Nation, and I've been a master gardener for a little over 5 years, 5 years, and I got my certification through NPC, which is Northland Pioneer College, and it was a program set up with the Navajo Nation and partnered. So once I got my certification, I started working in local communities around the area, Tisto mainly, and then with our local co-op. So also I've been just doing my own side business, helping individuals start their own gardens, like my sister here in Holbrook, in my mom's garden. So that's like a brief background on what I do, and I guess we can go right into what I'd like to share with you as far as planting. And Ladon here is my sister. She's the one that kind of showed me the seed package that you guys got with the soil kit and the drip line. So what I'm going to talk about here, and we have on the screen, is a PowerPoint. Um, it's companion planting. And companion planting is planting in part with different types of greens. It can either be flowers, pollinating flowers, or it can be two different type of vegetable crops, and it can even be a vegetable and an herb and a flower, and it's beneficial to the soil and also to the different crops that you plant with. But sometimes you can mix and match the wrong items, and they don't grow as well, they don't produce as much, or the root system, they're not compatible. So um, companion planting is different than regular agriculture planting, which is called like monocropping. And that's a different type of planting where we just plant one type of uh, crop and then we harvest it and then we put another crop down. And it works for a while, but once all the nutrients from the soil get taken up by that product or that crop, then we got to add in more soil amendments or fertilizers. And that's very cost, not very cost friendly. So when you companion plant, it, you're either adding in beneficial nutrients or even with some legumes, you're adding in nitrogen. And that's a whole nother story. But companion planting is basically you're just developing your soil for beneficial use. And my teacher there, her name's on the screen, Kim Howell Costrin. She's the one that taught me, well, our class, all the different techniques. And I'm still learning the different companion plants that go together. And it's a lot of trial and error. So on the screen there, um, we've got different sites you can check. I don't really look into those different sites. I'm old school. I like to look at books, but and we did get books from our class, so I refer to my books. But these are some of the different sites you can check on your computer or your phone, and they provide a lot of information. Um, we can go to the next. So three types of relationships, and you can see right there on the screen. One is they really like each other, and we made this pretty simple for the students and just the older natives too that we have in our community, and plants that really like each other. And on the right side, it's got a list of different plants and herbs there, starting off with basil, beans, broccoli, etc. And um, you can see how they work well together. Like we'll take, for instance, the first one is basil, and if you follow basil and you go down to the right, the first green item is plants that grow well together, and it's oregano. So if you plant oregano and basil and partner to each other, um, they produce very well and they really like each other. And so with basil and peppers, any type of peppers, it can be hot or sweet, whatever you prefer. And then you go right down the list again, and sage is there. Sage is a light green color, and it's beneficial to the garden in general. So those two herbs together are just pretty much beneficial to your garden, either by pollinators or producing better soil. And so is thyme way at the end, and then tomatoes. As the only companion planting I do with basil is with tomatoes. So my teacher said when you plant tomatoes and basil together, the basil enhances the flavor of the tomatoes. So you plant the tomato, and then right around the bottom of it, you can plant like maybe two. Sorry about that. I muted it. As I was saying, I plant my tomato and then maybe two or three basil around the bottom, and that's how I like to plant my tomatoes and basil. They also go good once you take them out of the, and they're ripe. You take them out. You can make a tomato sauce, tomato and basil, or a spaghetti sauce. Um, and then you go down to beans. Beans is the next one on the list. And beans, they like broccoli, carrots, cauliflowers. And if you plant beans with chives, chives is a type of allium, and that's in the allium family with onions, garlics, chives. So any type of alliums, they don't like beans. So there you see chives and garlics, leeks, yep, and onions. I think they don't produce as well, and they give off rather different flavor. So I just stick with this. I've never tried it to plant beans and onions. It just said do not do it because they don't like each other. I don't know the results. Because I don't want to test that theory out, but it holds true. As we go across with the beans, some of the boxes you see are white, and if it's white, there's you can plant them together. Like say I want to plant beans with melons. There's no benefits or there's no non-beneficial use, so they can still go together if the box is white on this here graph. Um, so let's look down to carrots. I see carrots way at the end has tomatoes. It has a yellow square, and way at the bottom, carrots will have good flavor but stunt the roots. And the root is the carrot, the actual carrot. So if you plant carrots with your tomatoes or near your tomatoes, the carrot will have great flavor, but you'll have tiny, tiny carrots. So if you want baby carrots that taste good, yeah, you can plant carrots and tomatoes together. And you can take a look at the whole list, and I'll go to number two. Number two, they really dislike each other. So that goes back to the squares with red, and look at all the different crops there and herbs that do not like each other, and they're not beneficial in any way to each other. Number three, they couldn't care less, and those are the white squares as you see on that graph. You can plant them together. There's no benefit. There's no non-beneficial. So that's one of the graphs that we use. Well, I like to use, and let's go on to the next. Okay, contrasting properties. And the examples are tall and short, corn and squash. When you plant those two together, the corn acts as a trellis, and the squash sometimes will start trellising up the corn. And that's a type of companion planting. Fast growers and slow growers, lettuce, spinach, and cabbage, those are pretty fast. Well, actually, cabbage, they're kind of slow. Lettuce and spinach, they're fast. Heavy feeders, light feeders, brassicas, and those are all the cabbage, broccolis, kale, those are the brassica family. Also, cauliflowers in that group, radishes. But they're heavy feeders. Corn's a heavy feeder. Squash is kind of in the middle. Tomatoes are heavy. Carrots are medium feeders. Radishes, they're kind of in the light feeding area. Beets are middle too. Um, but that's the categories of heavy feeders and light feeders. And when we mean feeders, they take a lot of nutrient out of the soil. So a heavy feeder takes a lot of nutrient, and you got to add your fertilizers or put in a lot of nitrogen back into the soil in the wintertime. Heavy feeders and soil improvers. Corn is a heavy feeder. Squash again. Beans, any kind of legumes are soil improvers. They add nitrogen. So beans, peas, those types of legumes, they add a lot of nitrogen to your soils. Sun loving and shade loving. Corn, they love sun, full sun. Beans, they love full sun. Sunflowers, they love full sun. And then lettuce, they're like in between. Just depends on when you plant it. But they like shade. They taste better when they're shaded and cool. Um, Aromatic and non-aromatic. Basil and tomatoes. Basil are very aromatic. They smell great. You can use them in your regular flower gardens just because they give off a lot of good aroma. And Mutual beneficiaries are carrots and onions. Okay, we can go to the next one. And insect repellents. We only have marigolds because gardeners, that's the main flower that we like to use in our garden. One of the, well, probably the best one. They repel a lot of insects, and you can plant them with pretty much a variety of different plants. And if you're not sure, you can refer back to that graph we had in the early part of our PowerPoint. But marigolds is one of the best insect repellents for your garden. It's gardener's best friend, flower wise, and there are others, but this is the main one, the easiest one that um, you can mix and match with a lot of your different crops. So we can go to the next one. And we'll talk about your seed list real quick. So Ladon sent me a little picture of your seed from the little packet, and what you had or have is green chili and slash chile verde, jalapeno, cilantro, a salad mix, zucchini, basil, carrots, tomatoes, and two type of flowers. There was pollinator flowers and marigolds. So I'll go ahead and talk about the planting of them. Um, in your area, I believe you're in a 7B, 7A zone, and there's different zones in different parts of the country. And zones are just how hot and how cold it gets in your area, the freezing temperatures, when it gets hot, when it gets cold. So there's like a stretch of good weather and really cold weather, and that's what zones are. So I guess in your zone, it's a 7A, 7B. So I can think of it as maybe like Flagstaff around us. That's probably the closest I can get. I understand you guys are still a little bit cold at night, um, and then very hot during the day. So in Flag, it's still pretty nice and cool, but it's nice weather, like maybe low 90s, high 80s when it's the hottest, and but that's kind of what I can compare it to. And then where I'm at, Delcon, it's lightly cool. It's not as cold as Flag, but it's very hot. And my understanding is you guys get very hot during the day and then pretty cold at night. So it's like an extreme high to cold ratio. But anyways, the jalapenos, they like to be planted in very hot, warm weather, and they need long growing periods. So I recommend that we start our jalapenos and chilies early, like maybe in March, and then we can transplant them directly into the ground. If we throw the seeds in right now, they'll grow, but by the time your season's over, you're not going to get any fruit off of them. And fruit by meaning any chilies. So um, these seeds, the chili seeds that you have, maybe save them for next year. Learn how to start them, or just buy transplants and put them right into the ground. That's like the easiest way I can recommend. Um, for your salad mix, you can throw those into the ground right now, and they'll pop up. And they're cool weather plants. They'll last a little bit longer once the fall comes, and then once a hard freeze comes, they'll freeze, and you'll be okay. Cilantro will be the same way. You can toss them in the ground right now, and then they'll pop up, and you'll get a bushel of cilantro, and they like the cool weather. But once you get a hard freeze, they'll freeze and they'll die. So I recommend your cilantro and your salad mix directly into the ground right now. Basil is kind of the same as your chilies. They like really warm to moderate hot weather. So buying transplants and putting them into the ground right now for you guys would be best. If you throw them in the ground, likewise, you'll get some You might get something off of it, but you won't get as much. And zucchinis, they love the summer. So right now is a good time for your zucchinis. Put them in the ground, they'll pop up. And then by mid to late summer, you can harvest your zucchinis. So those two can go into the ground. But I recommend you buying your basils if you want basil transplants and putting them into the ground. Tomatoes also are the same. You want to start those early and transplant them directly into the ground. I have tomatoes that I started back in April, and they're like, I don't know, that tall right now, and we just transplanted them. So by next month, they'll be a little bit taller, and they'll might produce a couple. Carrots, you can put those into the ground right now, and by winter time, they should already start being developed, the roots, and then you'll see the tops come up. Once that happens, what we like to do is just put a heavy mulch on top of them, and they can sit throughout the winter. And when you get hungry, that will be your refrigerator. You go outside, remove some of the mulch, and pull out your carrots. So you can put carrots into the ground right now. Um, if you don't know what kind of mulch you'd like to get, I just would say a good stack of straw. So once your carrots are in, they'll grow throughout the whole summer. And then by winter time, they should be fully developed. And then put a heavy straw layer on top, maybe about 4 to 6 inches. And then you got carrots throughout the winter. And the last two packets that I see on my phone are marigolds. You can toss those in direct seed them into the ground, or you can start them early. But you can put them into the ground right now, and they'll pop up. Um, and your pollinator flowers, I believe that's a mixture of flowers. That's what I'm assuming, because it just says pollinator flowers. So that could be either cool weather, warm weather, and I would say just try tossing them in the ground right now. I don't know exactly what kind of flowers those are, but I assume it's a mix. And so brings us to your drip lines. So this is in my hoop house. I have a drip line system, and it comes with regular drip line, the emitters, and the elbows and the tees. And what I believe you guys got is just one strip of drip line with the emitters and the hole punch. And I think it's what, 6 to 10 feet?
It was about 20 feet is what I
20 feet.
got.
Oh, okay. So 20 feet is a pretty good length. And that's enough to grow some of the seeds that you got there, probably the lettuce and, some space for the zucchini and then your flowers. So you can just run that down one lane, a strip, and then attach your emitters. I believe you got 20 of them too, maybe like every 1 foot. So every 1 foot, you'll put an emitter, place your emitter in there, and then connect it to a hose. What you see on my diagram is a different type of setup where I got a T closer to the left side, and then you'll see that little blue um, item right there. That's where the faucet is, or I don't know what the word is, but you can shut off valve, I guess. You can shut it off or turn it on. As you can see, when it's left to right, it's on, but once I turn it and it goes from, um, I want to say my east to west, because that's how it's put in my hoop house, it'll be off. But once it's lined up with the hose, you'll know it's on. And then it comes down and it goes into this elbow, and we call it elbow because it looks like an elbow. And it heads across. And then what I got is not drip hose, but I have drip tape attached to these drip hose. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but once it goes to that elbow, it shoots across, and then the three coming out of it, those are drip tape. And drip tape is different than drip hose. They're already got the emitters in them already, and they're not emitters. They're just like little holes spliced in there, and you don't have to punch them. You just roll it out to a certain length that you want, and then you cut it, and then you just put your ends, close the ends, and then that's the best way for us gardeners to do it. But if you have a smaller setup, the drip hose are better for you if you got a smaller, like square bed, or if you just want to do three lines, then that works. But for me, all of us gardeners, we use drip lines because they come in big old 1,000-foot rolls too, and our beds are like 100 feet long and to 50 feet long, and we got so many. So that's why we have our drip tape there. So we can go to the next picture, and that's another type of setup at my place, and this one's outside. So the previous one was inside my hoop house, and this one is outside, just right outside my hoop house, and it comes in again. Here it hits the T, and then you can see the shutoff valve is green this time, and then it splits in two, and the brown hose is actually just a drip hose, irrigation hose, and this one has already got pre-holes in it too. So I didn't have to add any hole punches to add emitters. They were already preset, and I just attached those and ran those all the way down. I think it was like 90 to 100 feet, and I just plant along the holes right there. So how I can tell the holes is you can either see them, or if you can't, just turn on the water and then see if it drips. So that's another type of setup. And you can go to the next one. And this is a picture of a small bed. I believe it's like 4x4. And this is the one that I set up here in Holbrook with my other sister at her house, and it's a type of companion planting. So what she has in this bed is tomatoes, and those are towards the corners. You can see that they're a little bit bigger. The tomatoes are in the four corners, and then right in between them you can see the basil, and then there's one right in the middle, and then between the two there's more basil. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 basil, and then 4 tomatoes. And she's got straw in there just to help mulch the bed there. And I believe we have another picture of the same bed, I believe, or another tomato bed. I believe it's the same picture, just a different angle. And that type of setup right there, you can use your little 20-foot donated drip hose, and you can cut those into maybe like 4 feet, and then buy some elbows or tees, and then set up like lines that come across here. Or again, you can just run it straight down. However you want to do it. You can be creative. There are all different kind of ways you can set up your drip hose. And it also depends on the space you have at home. So what my sister does is she just sprays it with her garden hose. She would like to later put in some drip hose, and she wants some help on that. So I will assist her on that probably for next year. And I believe that will be the last picture, right? So if there's any questions, you can read them off to me, or if not, we're good. Go ahead.
Oh, actually, we're good. We don't have any questions unless our group wants to ask questions. We have individuals here. from the Health and Human Services, and they've been listening to the podcast, and I'm sure they've learned a few things about companion planting and just tips. Some of those tips, we're not aware of. The information provided, you don't realize how one plant can be beneficial to another or how they can work in unison. I know that there's in the indigenous culture we have the three sisters that they talk about and how they help each other to grow. I don't know if you're familiar. You probably are, but
Yeah.
if you're familiar with the three sisters, that would be also another type of companion planting.
Yep. Yep. That's an old companion plant that we all know about here, and it's a really good um, way to companion plant. And we've been doing it for so long; it's just new now to everybody else, and we call it companion planting. But as natives, we already kind of did this, and we didn't put a name to it. We just kind of already knew, I guess. But as far as gardening, at first it's going to be a struggle and it's going to be probably overwhelming and stuff. But just keep at it. There's so much information out there. Take what you like and apply it. And if it doesn't work for you, maybe try something else. And that's the same way my sister here in Holbrook was. She started out small, and then she just got more into it. So now she's like a hobby gardener, and she really likes it. She enjoys it. She gets out every morning and looks at her garden, waters it, and she buys plants and asks for my advice. And you know, it's going to be difficult at the beginning, but keep at it. It's beneficial not just for you, your family, but the soil, everything. The hummingbirds, the bee pollinators, and all that. And um, if you would like any information, there's so much information out there on your phone and on the internet. Just
We have
search it.
one
Yeah.
question right now from a viewer. They're
Okay.
asking which plants included in the kits is the easiest to start for beginners?
All right.
Which one do you recommend and how?
Okay. Great question. Um, I think the easiest plant is the zucchini. That's my opinion, because that's what I started with. And you put a zucchini seed in the ground, and it'll pop up, and you'll get zucchini. Um, let's see.
We have another question, I believe.
Okay, that's the easiest one. Cilantro is pretty easy. The first time I planted cilantro wasn't that easy. I put it in the ground, nothing came up. But for my brother, he's not a gardener. He put it in the ground, it came up for him. It's like, what the heck? And sometimes if it doesn't come up, it's not your fault. Sometimes the seeds are not viable. So just keep that in mind also. Sometimes that will discourage somebody, like, oh, I put it in the ground and come up. But sometimes it's not your fault. It's probably not a viable seed that somebody packaged. Okay.
You also mentioned some information, or you said you would share a little bit on transplanting. Can you tell us about the easy, what's easy about transplanting and how to go about it?
Okay. So transplanting, you can go to either your local nursery if you have one around your area. They call them nurseries. You can also see if somebody around a local gardener starts tomatoes, any of these early starts, and then buy directly from them also. And it's easy because the hassle is already all done. It's just a plant. You take it out of the pot and you put it into your soil. Um, and depending on the soil, that's where it kind of gets tricky. But like in our area, we put it in sand, dirt. So what my teacher started doing was she puts a little bit of sand inside that little start, so it gets accustomed to that gritty sand. But in town, we all have potting soil, and our beds are potting soil. So that's what it goes into. So if you have sand at home and you take a transplant that's just been in potting soil, and then you put it into the sand, then it's going to go into a little bit of shock. Like, oh, this is a little bit rougher soil than I'm accustomed to. It's compact. So that's kind of like a little tip. But yeah, all the trouble's done. All you do is take it out and put it into your garden soil. And then you got an early start. That's why we transplant. It's just an early start. Um, the main reason we start these early is because they're grown south and way south, like in Mexico around the equator, and they get a lot of sun. So that's why these plants do better down south. They grow almost year round.
We have another question. How long can you keep and or save seeds?
How long can you keep and save seeds? Seeds can last for quite a while. I believe I've heard stories of like people finding seeds is like in a jar or in an old container. Um, some people say, "Oh, we found these seeds in a cave somewhere." I don't know if those are true, but those are just kind of stories. But they can last quite a while if you keep them in a nice, cool, dry place, and they're stored pretty well. No mold gets to them, and they're dried out pretty well. They can last quite a while, and they're pretty viable. I guess Mother Nature intended that, so they they last quite a while. And you can test them too. There's different ways to test them. I would go through it, but um, that's another segment. So if you want, you can look online too. There's different ways to test how your seeds are viable.
That brings up a question that I have. You had talked about a while back how if you take a plant, for example, plants that come from different areas of maybe a dry desert garden, and then you take it and you water it and you baby it, or and you provide loving care, that changes over time. The next time it's not going to be as weather resistant or as resistant as what it started out to be. Can you
Yeah,
explain that?
that's I believe that's true too because my teacher she did that to Hopi blue corn, and her Hopi blue corn grew like really tall, or the actual corn, whereas theirs were, a certain height because she put a lot of soil amendments. She put it in a garden bed. She drip line irrigated it, so it got a lot of water and it grew very big. So she changed the DNA of that plant. It was still a Hopi blue, but she just changed the DNA of it. And she always kind of laughs about it. She's like, "Oh man," she kind of feels bad about it too. But yeah, you change the dynamic of a plant, and once you get a seed from somewhere, uh, it's kind of good to know where it was grown, a little story on it, backstory, if it was grown in a garden bed or in regular soil, dirt, or what was it grown in aquaponics. Um, learn about little backstory of that seed and then apply it to what you have at home.
I don't see any more questions. Does anyone from our do any of our listeners have any more questions? So maybe in the future we can get a little more information, a little bit more feedback as we progress. We could share pictures of the progress. I know a few of us got garden kits here, and maybe we could share a little bit of that, the pictures and just information. So we're always looking for guests to provide us with vital information, mainly in the lines of health and wellness. And so that's what our goal is to here is to provide that information going forward.
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Great. Um, Thanks for the invite, and glad to share the information with future gardeners, and have fun out there.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully everyone has learned maybe a thing or two about gardening, planting, companion planting, the relationships between plants, transplanting, and then also the Dripline System. So you can reach out to us here on Facebook. Comments are still coming in. And then also you can reach out to us here at in the building. We have our Healthy Kids, Healthy Community Coordinator, Victoria, who's also our contact person for the Sembrando Salud garden kits. We still have a few more. Just reach out. We can deliver them, or you can stop by here at the office and pick up a kit. But we'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you to all of Santa Defonso, who was all those who joined us. And we also want to thank our guest, Artie Yazzie, Master Gardener. And in the future, we look forward to having a conversation with you. So, yeah.
Oh, all right then. Thank you. You guys all take care now.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.